Forever and Always. Written by Wondrous Wendy. Narrated by Ranger Zath. Chapter 3. The official statement from the Office of the Director states that Northmore retired and went upstate, leaving Agent Zachariah Trench as his successor. Unofficially, Northmore has disappeared, fleeing the oldest house, breaching containment. As his first classified order as director, Trench tells Marshall to arrange teams to hunt him down. Northmore is unstable, and he presents a threat to civilians as his condition further deteriorates. Society at large has no idea vampires actually exist. Tomasi may be a damn good head of communications, but there are some news stories that can't be swept aside. The library within the oldest house contains originals of historic texts collected by centuries of past directors, sires as they once were called, including the Malleus Maleficum. The Compendium on Demonology and Witchcraft once served as a trophy from old medieval battles between covens and the Inquisition. Now, it offers extensive insight into how the Rangers can track, capture, and neutralize Northmore before he becomes national news. Even Darling has requested access to various tomes from the deepest recesses of the archives for unknown reasons. All of the junior researchers on duty and 2 of Marshall's Rangers were killed in Northmore's blind rage. Many were unrecognizable, torn to pieces. One poor woman was disemboweled. Darling was the only survivor. He had enough sense to scramble to safety while Northmore ripped his lab apart. Despite his laboratory becoming near dysfunctional, Darling hasn't left research in days since the Rite of Blood. Marshall offers no explanation for the scientist's reclusive behavior, so Trench assumes the worst. Darling's avoiding him after the incident in medical. At the time, Trench was relieved Darling obeyed his orders and locked him up. Trench crossed countless boundaries by invading his space. He broke his trust, and he threatened to hurt him. Perhaps even worse. Nonetheless, somewhere in the recesses of his heart, Trench hoped his friend wouldn't actually see him as a monster. Trench remains at the oldest house to avoid telling his wife what has happened. So much of what takes place at the Federal Bureau of Control sounds like fantasy and science fiction. Even after he learned the true nature of directors, he never told her about the agency's history, with roots going back millennia. For centuries, powerful elites collected trinkets and curios deemed too dangerous to be left in the hands of mere mortals. Zachariah knows little about the circumstances surrounding the containment of items, but he suspects the Bureau was once an old secret society. Since the modern creation of the Federal Bureau of Control in the early 20th century, a para-utilitarian underwent the Rite of Blood to become the director. They led until the sickness forced them to pass on their mysterious powers. First Theodore Ashe Sr., then Broderick Northmore, and now Zachariah Trench. Even if Trench felt comfortable telling his wife about the true nature of the Bureau's leadership, he isn't ready to be near civilians. He attacked Darling in medical. He doesn't trust himself near his wife and daughter. The first time he consumed prepared blood, he couldn't keep it down. It took several attempts to convince himself his new body needed it to function. Vampirism in itself is a paradox. Like Northmore, he will need blood for the rest of his life in order to retain any resemblance to humanity. Yet, drinking blood is inhuman. The act made Northmore a monster in Trench's eyes. Now, he has become one too. Trench doesn't want to drink blood again. The mere thought is repulsive, disgusting. The taste, the texture, the smell. Doesn't matter how it's packaged, it's horrific. Unnatural. He doesn't know what's worse. To know where the blood comes from, or to never know if it came from another person or an animal. Someone alive or dead. The blood Marshall prepared for him has carried him this far, but the gnawing sensation has returned. As days pass, a chronic ache forms in his muscles, causing splitting headaches. He's irritable, anxious, volatile. The hunger will only worsen the longer it's ignored. He can't hide in his office forever. Will he ever be able to control himself long enough to see his wife and daughter again? There is no winning in this awful situation. There is only waiting for the inevitable. This method will have diminishing returns, eventually forcing a decision. Will he let himself starve? Or will he have to make a thrall, like Northmore, to survive? Trench already knows the answer. He'll starve before hurting anyone else. After spending an entire month in research, Darling races up to Executive to seek out his brooding best friend. Barbara doesn't sit at her desk, so Darling knocks on the door to the director's office. He hears Trench invite him in. Trench sits in the big chair with his office encased in near darkness. He rests just outside a ring of soft light from the single banker's lamp on his desk. Darling has no choice but to squint to make out Trench's figure. "Darling?" Trench asks from the shadows. The burnt end of a cigarette signals his presence, lighting as he takes a drag on it. He leans forward in his chair, moving into the halo of light. "What are you doing here?" "I work here?" Darling sits down across from Trench. "Hello to you, too." Burnt-out cigarettes lay piled in an ashtray. The director has been hitting Black Pyramids harder than usual. You know, it's ironic, don't you think? For a vampire to be the one inviting someone in? It's normally the other way around. Trench doesn't laugh. He doesn't even crack a ghost of a smile. "Sorry, bad joke." "What are you doing here?" Trench asks again, tired. "Straight to business. Got it. Well, I have good news for you. I've finally done it." Trench's attention snaps to Darling. "You found a cure?" Darling's proud grin falls. He scratches the back of his neck, realizing he has to give bad news first. "No, not for the sickness. I'm sorry, Zach." Trench leans back in his chair, retreating from the light. Unlike Northmore, he doesn't lash out at Darling in anger or disappointment. "I've been down in research devouring whatever material I could get my hands on to come up with a potential blood alternative." Darling digs into the breast pocket of his lab coat to retrieve a thin vial with a bright red liquid inside. "Synthetic blood. It contains all the nutrients and compounds found in regular human blood," he explains, placing the filled vial on the director's desk. "But it's, ethically sourced. Vegan?" Trench doesn't reach for it immediately. Instead, he continues idly smoking, staring across his desk at Darling. Darling drums his fingers against the armrest. "Would you be willing to try it?" He grows more and more uncertain as seconds tick by with no movement from Trench. To fill the dead air, he falls back on hard science to provide the crutch he needs. "This could help, Trench. I spoke with Marshall and she explained how difficult drinking real blood was for you. I know this hasn't been easy, which is why I've been working non-stop." He clasps his hands in front of him. "Each part of my creation is completely synthetic, produced in a laboratory with chemicals. It's 55% plasma, 41% red blood cells, 4% white blood cells, and platelets. If you want me to be more specific, just tell me." Darling puts his hands in his lab coat's pocket, waiting with bated breath. "I don't know what kind of blood you might, prefer. I can only imagine each blood type has a different flavor. I decided on O negative since it's the universal blood donor, and funny enough, it's my blood type too. Small world. Not really. That's not how blood types work. It's a joke. I'm joking." Darling laughs and rakes his mind for what else he can say to assuage Trench's concern. "Honestly, the great thing about this stuff, in my opinion, is that you can put it on anything. I added artificial flavors to it. The consistency is meant to resemble a condiment. No need to sip from a sterilized blood bag that stinks like alcohol." Darling grins. "Craving a big old steak like the good old days? No problem. Just use this stuff instead of barbecue sauce." It's too dark in the room, and he can't get a clear read on Zachariah's expression. He's drowning out here. "Look, the point is, I hope the knowledge that this..." He points to the vial. was completely made in a laboratory will help make the whole vampire experience less nightmarish. It's no different than the stuff they make in factories, with less corn syrup. If you like it and end up having a bigger appetite, I can always make more. With a sigh, Darling gives up. He's babbling and pissing Trench off further and further. Zach, I just wanted to help, he pleads, praying his friend will listen. I know it's not the Nobel Prize winning discovery you wanted me to uncover, but I promise, I'm trying my best to find a cure. I just need you to hold on a little while longer. Trench puts out his forgotten cigarette in the ashtray and reaches for the vial. The cork pops off, falling into his lap. Darling watches with bated breath as Trench tilts his head back and downs it without so much as a grimace. He tries to gauge his reaction, but Trench gives little away. How was it? Without hesitation, Trench nods. It will work. 3 words, and it's all the validation Darling needs after a month spent living in his laboratory, only stopping to eat, bathe, and sleep. He perks up, grinning with joy. It's like Trench just told him his experiment won the science fair. Who needs replicas of volcanoes when you can nearly cure an insatiable hunger driving your friend to horrific madness? I'm so relieved to hear that. Darling gets up and clasps his hands together. I have more already made. I'll have it brought up to your office. Casper, wait. Darling stops congratulating himself and glances back to Trench, who has moved into the light. Maybe it's confirmation bias working wonders, but Trench already looks so much better. Thank you, Trench murmurs, his voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means to me. A smile spreads across Darling's face. I could say the same for you. You have no idea how happy this makes me too. They both relish in the moment, sharing something unspoken as their eyes meet. The last time they shared a room together, Trench was out of his mind, completely at the mercy of the thirsty creature inhabiting his body. He wasn't in control of himself. Northmore upended his life. Now, with an endless supply of synthetic blood at his fingertips, Trench will be able to get his life back on track. Maybe he will be able to live something akin to a normal life with his family. I already have a name in the works. You'll love it. Be positive. Darling smiles. Do you get it? BE positive? Encouraging and tasty. Like the blood type, too. Even if it's O negative. Trench laughs. Even he can't resist a smile. Yes, Casper. I get it. Come on. We can all use a chuckle after the last few weeks. It's a grave new world, but we'll get through it together. Stop. Trench grunts. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try to resist. I'm just really relieved this worked. Their eyes meet across the room, and in that moment, Darling knows that no matter what becomes of Zachariah, he'll never stop loving him. Author's notes. Shout out to Zath for the brilliant name of the synthetic blood. I knew I wanted it to be a blood-related pun, but Be Positive was just too brilliant to pass up. This is Zath, signing off until the next chapter. I'll see you back here next time with Forever and Always, a Control fanfic by Wondrous Wendy.